Hey, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Brand OTC or Brand Over the Counter, where we answer your branding questions with a faux over the counter product. Now, today's product is called Fresh Frame RX, and it helps you to know when to update your brand's visuals. Now, if you're struggling with any of these side effects, you definitely want to pay attention to this episode. So, if you have an outdated look that makes your brand feel irrelevant, visual inconsistency across platforms, a mismatch between your visuals and your current brand direction, confusion among new and loyal customers, and missed opportunities to stand out in your market, again, you definitely want to pay attention to this episode. Well, hello, hello. My name is Cynthia Kita, and I am your brand strategist, designer, and educator here at the Design Firmacy. And today's question is, how often should I refresh my brand's visuals? Now, I will say off the bat, there is no specific time frame for you to work with. I will give you a little bit of one, but just know that it's really, really dependent on your brand strategy. Now, usually, your visuals often are your first handshake, your first introduction, your first impression to potential customers. And so if it's outdated, if it's not on brand, if it's disconnected from your audience, it will erode trust and credibility, and no one is going to come up with a sign and say, hey, I don't trust you because of your brand's appearance. They'll just keep it to themselves and maybe tell a few friends that, hey, maybe this brand isn't one that we should kind of stick with. It looks like maybe they don't care about themselves too much. They don't take good care of themselves. Maybe, they don't shower and do that self-care that's necessary. But on the other side of that, if you refresh your brand too often, you risk losing recognition because you're just always changing. No one wants to hang out with someone who is not consistent. And so let's get into it. So, number one, you have to understand the difference between a brand refresh and a rebrand. I know the terms are used often interchangeably, but we really need to understand that a refresh involves like very subtle changes or updates that keep your brand looking modern and relevant, whereas a rebrand is literally a full overhaul of all of your visuals and your brand strategy, because you can't change anything about your business if you don't first do strategy. So, pardon me, an example of that is Starbucks. If you look at the logo journey of Starbucks, they started a specific way, and although their logo has changed slightly over the years, it is still the same image of, I believe, the mermaid or whoever it may be on their logo, versus just a completely different logo in general. And you could probably say the same thing about McDonald's as well. Back in the day, it was a bit more, it was fit for the times, right? But the logo in and of itself has remained essentially the same, although it's been, tweaked a little bit. It's been refreshed a bit based on, the age that we're in. It looks a bit more modern now, even though I may not necessarily like the style of their buildings right now where they're all gray and stuff. I remember what it was like growing up where it was more colorful in the red and white and, all of the characters and stuff. But that type of a design would not fit in today's age, right? So again, it has to change with the times, but it can still remain true to how, like, whatever the design originally is. Okay, so like I said, I don't want to give you a timeline, but generally you want to think in the 3 to 5 year mark. And there are many exceptions that can be made. You can refresh your visuals within 3 to 5 years to make sure, again, that things are fresh and they stay with the times. I'm not saying that you should go do a full rebrand every 3 to 5 years. That's not what I'm saying, just a refresh, because we've defined the difference between a refresh and a rebrand. All right, so some exceptions to a refresh would be a major business shift if your audience changes, or, if you have any outdated design trends that no longer work, then you want to go ahead and do that rebrand. But refresh what is already there and just give it a little what's the word? Like just plump it up a little bit to fit the times. All right. So if you have a business where you want to expand into another market or another audience, well, not like a completely different audience, but you want to add children, maybe you want to add a yellow or something, or an orange, or something that can appeal to children while still appealing to your main audience as well. So that's just by the way. Now you want to make sure that you're matching your visuals to your current brand direction, which is a little bit of what I was talking about. So if your brand strategy is going to change, your visuals will absolutely have to follow that. So if you have a skincare line and you're moving from luxury spa clientele to Gen Z consumers, you definitely want to consider introducing more bold colors and playful illustrations to match what is appealing for that new audience, right? You cannot use the same tactics to sell to somebody that's completely new. And that's where, a rebrand would come into play. Let's say your brand initially, served teenagers, but then you realize, like, yes, we started off selling to teenagers, but our teenagers are going to grow, and maybe we want to grow with them. Maybe we want to change things to fit the journey that they're on. And so then you kind of evolve and change things based on the direction that your brand is going in. Now, even if you decide not to follow the teenagers as they grow, if you're stuck with or if you remain in that teenage audience, you want to make sure, again, you're still moving through generations. You want to make sure that your brand still fits what is appealing for that specific generation of teenagers. Now, next is you want to look for signs that you're due for a refresh. So if you have, declining engagement on, platforms where your visuals are present, like, something like an Instagram or a Pinterest, you definitely want to consider a refresh. If your brand assets look noticeably dated, compared to your competitors, again, you want to go ahead and look into a refresh. Again, great examples of this is like a Starbucks. McDonald's is a good one where you can kind of see the journey. With Amazon, their logo has changed. I mean, it's changed greatly from what it was when they first started, but you could also see and look at that as, how the journey kind of evolves for them as well. So those are some examples. Like if you're not really understanding refresh, I'll see if I could put some examples of that on the screen so that you guys could see the evolution of the logos. And you could also Google that as well. And then, if you have inconsistencies on your website versus your packaging and your marketing materials, definitely want to consider a refresh, because you want all of those things to be aligned. You want them to be the same. You want them to speak to each other, and they can't speak to each other if they're completely different. They should look like one family. Excuse me. And then you should avoid changing things just for the sake of changing things. Like if you go into a refresh or a rebrand without any strategic reasons or without strategy alone, you're just going to alienate your loyal customers, because you're just going to confuse them. Like, why is this happening in the first place? It doesn't need to happen. And they're changing all these things, and you take them out of the level of comfort that they were in. And so, sometimes you go through a complete rebrand and then your audience rejects it because they're like, what is this? I don't like this. We didn't need this. We didn't ask for this, right? And so, when you are going through, some of these changes, especially a rebrand, you definitely want to let your audience in on that change that you're about to make. Bring them in on the journey. Let them pick certain elements so that they can feel included, so that that change is not just a big blow to everything that they were just so comfortable with. They knew that it was coming. They played a part. They voted for whatever it was that you allowed them to vote for, so on and so forth. That is an important part of, the relationship that you're building with your audience. And then finally, you want to test before you launch a full refresh. So you want to share, some updated design elements you could share with a small segment of your audience list. if you have their emails, or maybe you want to share it on a particular social profile to see how people respond. You can run some A/B tests. You can do some ads and see, how people respond to your old look versus your updated one, and see if you're moving in the right direction. So, those are just some things that you guys should consider, when you're either refreshing or rebranding in general. Refreshing your visuals is about staying relevant while still being recognizable. It's just a refresh. You want people to still know who you are. So if you do it a little too soon, you tend to confuse your audience. But if you do it too late, you're going to look outdated, and that, takes away the trust that they will have in you. So there's a sweet spot, when your visuals are no longer matching where your brand currently is, your story, and or your audience's expectations. You definitely want to consider refreshing. And, at the end of the day, if you brand your business correctly the first time with strategy, most times, you won't really have to do a complete rebrand unless your business is just going in a totally different direction. Most times you would have budgeted for some of this change, and that would probably have been taken into account with your brand strategist who was designing all of your elements for you. And so typically you would only really have to focus on just refreshing over time. Because even brands like Walmart, it's generally it's kept the same look and just updated it a little bit, over time. And that's essentially what you should do. 9 times out of 10, your logo and your assets, your visual assets, should be what they will continue to be till kingdom come, and you should just go through a little bit of a refresh here and there. But if you do it right, it should last you. It's one of the greatest investments you can make when you do it right. So no shade to anyone who, has the Fiverr thing. You could find some really great designers on Fiverr, but make sure that you're thinking about the longevity of your brand visually and literally, and kind of moving from that knowledge and that understanding. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye. Discover what sets your brand apart, then say it with confidence. What's Your Secret Sauce is a free 3-day challenge designed to help entrepreneurs uncover the unique flavor that makes their brand unforgettable. Through guided prompts, live training, and powerful clarity exercises, you'll identify what truly sets you apart and how to communicate it in a way that connects and converts. If you've ever struggled to stand out in a crowded market or explain what makes you different, this challenge will give you the breakthrough you need. You'll walk away with your personalized secret sauce recipe, a clear, compelling blend of your brand's strengths, purpose, and positioning that makes selling feel natural. Join us by visiting brandmysecretsauce.com. You're doing all the things: posting content, updating your website, running ads, tweaking your offers, but still wondering, why isn't this working? Truth is, you might be focusing on areas that look productive, but aren't actually moving the needle. The Brand Vitals Assessment helps you stop guessing and start targeting. It's like a wellness checkup, but for your brand. You'll gain crystal clear insight into the 9 essential areas every brand needs to thrive. No fluff, no filler, just facts about where your brand stands and what needs your focus. Because clarity is the first step to real momentum. And when you know where to focus, you start to see progress, not just activity. Get out of busy work. Get into brand building that actually works. Take the Brand Vitals Assessment now. Have you tapped into your Firmacy benefits? As a beneficiary, you unlock special offers, gifts, and always stay in the loop. Subscribe today to receive your exclusive dose. Visit firmacybenefits.com.